And welcome back to another episode of the Chips Podcast. Tyler Melito alongside Ryan Amick once again. Ryan, how are you, sir?
Been great. Getting a little crazy cooped up in the house a little bit. Every week just keeps on going by and by. It gets a little longer, but we're looking towards a little bit of hope. I mean, things are starting to open up towards June, I believe. Some public areas are starting to open up maybe. And staying with the basketball side of things, which we'll get into today, the NBA is looking like they might resume play in June. So there is some hope to look forward to in the coming months. But as of right now, we're still in per usual quarantine.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird. Like the light at the end of the tunnel, you could kind of see it. And you mentioned the NBA maybe starting their season. They might start in Disney World, which has me very happy as a Disney fan, as I'm wearing my part-time Beast shirt, Beauty and the Beast. But let's talk about the NBA, Ryan, because who knows how much is going to be left. They haven't announced how much of the regular season they'll play. Will they go straight into the playoffs? So let's assume that they're going to go straight into the playoffs, or maybe they'll play a couple regular season games just to get teams warmed up.
Yeah, honestly, in my belief, I think they should just go straight to the playoffs. I don't feel like – because when you look at the standings, only one spot is really up for grabs, and that's the 8th seed in the West.
Yeah.
The East is pretty much locked up. The 8 teams there.
Well, in terms of clinching a playoff spot, there are a lot of teams that can get shuffled around, and we'll mention that.
Yeah. But I just don't think with – there's going to be an asterisk next to this season no matter what. This is definitely not your usual season. So I feel like it would be okay for them to just shorten the season, just cut it down, go straight to the playoffs, have like a month in Disney World where they could just where we could just crown a champion and not have this whole season go to waste. And I feel like that'd be the best move.
As long as they crown a champion, I will be happy. I don't care how they do it. Yeah. So let's talk about first, before we go into the playoff picture, let's talk about the regular season awards. That's your MVP, your Rookie of the Year, Coach of the Year, first team, second team, third team, All-NBA, etc. And let's dive in. Who do we think will win those awards? So, Ryan, where would you want to start with? Because we get started in numerous places.
I was going to say we probably save the big one, MVP and stuff, for last. But you know what? Let's go right into six men.
Okay.
The more debatable ones. I want to hear who you have as your sixth man of the year.
Not going to lie, sixth man of the year, it's a 3-horse race in my opinion. I think it's between Lou Williams, who always seems to win it, Montrezl Harrell, who was up for it last year, has had a great year this year, but I'm going to go with Dennis Schroeder of the Oklahoma City Thunder. I think he's had a remarkable year backing up both Chris Paul and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I think that 3-guard trio they have in Oklahoma City can be something nice, and I'm sure Chris Paul won't be there for much, much longer. But Schroeder, he's came on this year in a reserve role. He's provided really good minutes for that Thunder team. And he leads that bench unit in scoring. He just comes on, and God forbid if Shai Alexander or CP3 gets in foul trouble, Schroeder can come in, and you're not worried about, oh, God, we have a liability now at point guard. Because Schroeder, he played starter minutes for the majority of his career as an Atlanta Hawk. And now with the Thunder, he's kind of had a resurgence, and he's kind of taken his game to the next level, although it might not be at an all-star, all-NBA level. He's, I think, gotten better with the Thunder than he was with the Hawks.
Yeah, it's definitely a 3-person race for 6 men. As you said, Lou Will, who's kind of like Jamal Crawford. He's won countless – it seems like it goes to him every year. So
he named his son 6. Lou Will named his son 6.
Yeah.
After
he got a song named after him at 6. I mean, he embodies the 6th man. So it could go to him this year. I don't think they'll give it to him again this year because there are other people who are deserving of it, like you said with Schroeder. And it was a toss-up between Schroeder and Harrell for me, but I personally went with Montrezl Harrell. I think when you look at the numbers, you kind of compare their numbers, you think of Schroeder as more of an offensive-minded player, and and Harrell lives up to that as well with the numbers. You look at it, 18 points per game, Schroeder 19 points a game. But then you have the rebounding part that Montrezl obviously has the upper hand with 7 boards per game. And he does shoot more inside the paint, which is why his shooting numbers are up at 58% from the field. But still, I mean, when you're looking at their numbers side by side, I think it kind of tells the story there. And also, not even just the regular basic numbers, when you look more at the advanced stats, more like the win shares, defensive plus minus, all that type of stuff. Obviously, Montrezl is a better defender, and he just has more numbers in the advanced sense as well. He's got 7 win shares, which is crazy for a bench player to have. And I think it is close between the two. Harrell has definitely had more of a surprise season, has helped that Thunder team get into the playoff race with his solid play. But Also, the Clippers, number 2 seed, not only because of Lou Will off the bench, but because of Harrell, the defensive anchor, gets the board, shoots efficiently, and he accounts for a lot of their wins, as shown in the numbers. So I think Harrell has a bit of the upper hand, but it is a close race for the sixth man.
Yeah, I completely agree. It could go either way. And there is really a 3-person race. Maybe someone could come out. I can't just think off the top of my head, but it's going to be, I think it's going to be Schroeder or Harrell. Like you mentioned, Lou Will has won this award countless times. So it's just going to be one of those two guys. Let's go to Rookie of the Year because that's probably the one with the least amount of controversy. I'm assuming we're going to go with the same guy here. And if we don't, I'm going to be very mad at you.
No, we're both doing Ja Morant.
It's Ja Morant.
Right now. There are some people who might say Zion. I mean, he's higher in points per game, but that's because he's played less.
He played 13 games.
And they've had a bit of a turnaround that has New Orleans since he's come back, since he started his rookie year. And I mean, there's no doubt that if he played the whole year, he could easily have been the Rookie of the Year. He was a favorite coming into the year. I mean, just look at what Ja's done. This Grizzlies team, I don't think anyone really thought they would make a playoff push. They're right now locked at the 8th seed. It's a tight battle for the 8th seed, but right now the Grizzlies have a couple games there, and it's led by their young point guard, who this whole young team kind of revolves around. He's got 6.9 assists per game, which leads all rookies by about 3. I mean, he's just by far one of the best facilitators we've seen in this draft. He's also got 17 points, shooting 49% from the field, which is best among point guards. I mean, you'd like to see maybe his free throw percentage go a little more. It's at 77. He can work on that a bit. But there's not much to hate with him. He's actually played the majority of the season, and he's put up great numbers. And just not even looking at the numbers, just his on-court play and how he's affected that team. I think it's undoubtable that Ja Morant deserves the Rookie of the Year.
Yeah, I agree. I think you mentioned it. Had Zion Williamson played the full season, he probably would have been hands down the Rookie of the Year. And I think if the season did not get interrupted by this coronavirus pandemic and the Pelicans made the playoff, I think it would have been very, very hard to not give Zion Williamson the Rookie of the Year, given how well he played. I think he scored at least 20 points in almost every single game, which for a rookie is phenomenal. But the games number really, that's what it comes down to. It's similar to Joel Embiid in his quote-unquote rookie year, even though it's like his 3rd year since being drafted. He only played in, I think, like 30-something games or something crazy like that. And they ended up giving it to Malcolm Brogdon because Brogdon simply played in more games. That would be the same argument between the two. I don't think Ja Morant is going to be Malcolm Brogdon. I think he's going to be better than Malcolm Brogdon. But had Zion played more games. Like, I think the maximum number of games he could have played if there were no interruption in the season was like 30-something, like mid to low 30s. Which is not a lot in the grand scheme of things. Ja Morant, he's led his team this entire season. Like you mentioned, the team revolves around him, and they're currently in the 8th seed, and they probably will make the playoffs. It has to go Ja Morant. It can't go anywhere else, really.
Yeah, I agree with that. It is very similar to the Embiid situation. Moving on, another award we have to give out is Most Improved Player. Tyler, who do you have that distinction going to?
I mean, if you listen to our radio show back in Syracuse, I was on this guy's hype train the whole dang time. Bam Adebayo. I mean, the guy for Miami has broken out into a star this season, and he was a first-time All-Star for a Miami Heat team that got to its highest, 2nd in the Eastern Conference, averaging, I have the numbers right here, hang on, 16.2 points per game, 10.5 rebounds, 5.1 assists, and just overall was dominant. He does need to improve as a free throw shooter. He only shot 69%, but he was a clear second option on a rather young Miami Heat team with Jimmy Butler, who has rubbed young teammates the wrong way. We saw it in Minnesota with Karl-Anthony Towns and Andrew Wiggins. Bam Adebayo has seemed to embrace the role that he has now as a second option on this team. And he's just broken out this year. I love watching him play. He's probably one of my favorite players to watch, and I think Bam Adebayo greatly deserves this award. You could go with a guy like a Brandon Ingram, but I think Bam Adebayo has meant more to his team, especially given the fact that the Heat are going to be in the playoffs and New Orleans will not.
Yeah, I remember our conversation about Bam back in Syracuse. You were very on the Bam train as well. I also agreed with that statement. I am a huge fan of Bam as well, which is why I think he should earn this award. And as you said, people like Brandon Ingram, Jason Tatum, Luka Doncic, they were budding stars that blew up into stardom this year, which is why you could argue that they could be up for this award. But when you just look at someone who came out of nowhere and went from a decent starter to an all-star level talent, you're looking at Bam Adebayo. As you said, his numbers shot up by 8 points from his last year, 3 boards and 3 assists. He improved in each of those categories. I mean, of course, he had more minutes. He had more of a quintessential role in this Miami Heat team. But because of that, they've won a lot more games than they did last year and have exceeded expectations. And a lot of that has to go with arguably their second best player on the team in Bam Adebayo. So I agree. I think he should definitely win this award.
You mentioned a guy in Luka Doncic for a most improved. I disagree with you in that regard simply because I don't think you can give a second-year player most improved. That's expected almost for a guy from his first year to his second year to improve in pretty large strides. But I agree, Jason Tatum, definitely deserving. Brandon Ingram. There could possibly be an argument for Pascal Siakam to win this again, getting back-to-back, because he's taken his game to a much greater level. And I'm sorry if you hear my dog barking in the background, but he agrees with me. Bam Adebayo, I think, is the clear favorite in this one.
I agree.
Let's shift gears to the defensive player of the year. I think this is another one there won't be much debate.
Really? I was going to say it's a tough one.
It's a 2-horse race.
Yeah.
Anthony Davis and Ben Simmons, right?
What?
Who are you thinking?
AD and Giannis.
I forgot about Giannis. Yeah, so it's 3-horse race. Because Ben Simmons, he is, I think, leading the league steals.
If there was a most improved defensive player, I think it would go Ben Simmons. But if we're just talking pure defensive talents in this league, I think it's AD and Giannis. And
yeah.
A bit of a step there. And it's really close between these two. Me personally, I do have AD winning this award, but I think you go either way. And if you just look at the number, first of all, watch a single Lakers game. And you can just see the defensive presence he has and just that whole team. I mean, you can't go inside at all. They'll stuff every shot you put up. They're the best interior defense in the league in that respect. They have the most blocks. And then you look at AD's personal stats. He's second in the league with 2.4 blocks a game. Still a top 5 in steals as well. So he, on both sides of the defense, he makes an impact. And he's top 5 in a countless number of defensive ratings, including defensive rating, defensive win shares, and defensive plus minus. I think just look at the numbers, look at his impact on how the Lakers defense has shifted from last year to this year. I think AD should be the defensive player of the year.
I agree with you. I also have Anthony Davis winning the defensive player of the year. There is an argument, though, for Giannis Antetokounmpo, and I'm sure we'll talk about him more later for another award in some capacity. That award being the MVP, obviously, but we'll talk about that later. I think the one thing that hurts Anthony Davis, the Lakers team stats, when you look at it, they have 3 really good rim protectors. Or I wouldn't say really good, but very solid rim protectors in AD, JaVale McGee, and Dwight Howard, who have all been playing out of their minds this season for a Lakers team who's first in the Western Conference. Let's go Lakers. And I think that could be the one counter argument against Anthony Davis is that he doesn't have to do as much on defense because regardless of whether he's in or not, it's not like the Lakers team takes a major hit or a major jump if he's on the court or off the court. Giannis, there is a clear discrepancy from when he is off the court versus when he is on the court on defense, and the Bucks thrive in that case. But once again, I think Anthony Davis definitely deserves it. The guy was a defensive monster this year, averaging 2.4 blocks per game. I mean, that presence alone is insane. He also has 1.5 steals, which is just off his career high. So, and I think had he played a full season, he would have gotten it. And I think playing with LeBron James has definitely helped him in that regard. So Anthony Davis clearly deserves it, but you can definitely make a case for Giannis Antetokounmpo.
Yeah, I wouldn't say clearly. I think it's more of a toss-up. And
I'm saying as a Laker fan.
We'll get into Giannis in a second, and some of the stats I have to back up it. You could argue he could be the defensive player of the year. And like you said, that Bucks team is not the same when he's off the floor defensively. But I mean, then again, you can't really just because the Bucks as a team aren't as good on defense, you can't take that against Anthony Davis and what he's done. Like, sure, the rest of the Lakers bench has good rim protectors as well, but AD is the ultimate rim protector. He's that Rudy Gobert mold that just won 2 defensive player of the year or back-to-back years. Mm-hmm. So I think AD gets this.
Yep, I agree. Before we go to the MVP, let's go Coach of the Year real quick because that is an important award, and there are a plethora of options when you think about it. There have been a lot of teams that have thrived under their coach. I'm going to go with Nick Nurse, though, with the Toronto Raptors. You can make the case for Eric Spoelstra. You can make the case for Billy Donovan, make the case for Frank Vogel. But I'm going to go with Nurse simply because the Raptors were expected to be mid to bottom of the Eastern Conference. And Nurse, after losing Kawhi Leonard, and Nurse has taken this team to another level. They are clear threats to the Bucks in the Eastern Conference. Although in the games, might not necessarily the Bucks have blown them out, but the Raptors can do some things in the playoffs if they get to it. And the Raptors are the number 2 seed in the East, and he has evolved certain guys like a Pascal Siakam, like a Norman Powell, Kyle Lowry, Serge Ibaka, Marc Gasol. All those guys have taken another step when you didn't even think they can go any further. And I think that is credited to Nick Nurse. And I think they made a brilliant decision in firing Dwayne Casey despite winning Coach of the Year, because Nick Nurse has taken his team to a championship and could definitely get them back to the finals next year. Or this year.
They made a couple good moves last year. Not only the head coaching change, but then the trade, obviously, DeMar for Kawhi Leonard. That's why, blanking on his name, Raptors GM.
Masai Ujiri.
Ujiri. That's why he won Executive of the Year last year, because he turned that team into a muddling playoff team that lost to LeBron every year into the NBA champions within a year. And in terms of Coach of the Year, I think there are a couple candidates you could look at. Like you said, Eric Spoelstra, that Heat team was not expected to do this well, and a lot of
not even close
to him. Then you look at Billy Donovan, talk about exceeding expectations. I think the Thunder have done as well. But my Coach of the Year, I agree with you, Nick Nurse, talk about exceeding expectations. We're losing Kawhi Leonard in free agency and not expecting to still be a top-tier team in the Eastern Conference. And at one point, the Raptors, I think, won 18 games in a row or something crazy, and just no one talked about it.
16
a lot of that. You don't win 18 games in a row without good coaching. You don't win an NBA championship without good coaching. Nick Nurse deserves this award for what he did last year and what he's done this year with the third best team in the NBA in terms of ranking. And his team leads the league in defense, only allowing 106 points a game. So I think it's undoubtedly Nick Nurse deserves this award.
I completely agree with you. Let's get to the final individual award, the MVP. It's a 2-horse race. Some guys came along during the year. Luka Doncic was in the conversation for a little bit. James Harden was in it. But it really comes down to Giannis Antetokounmpo to go back-to-back, or LeBron James to win it for the first time in what seems like forever, even though I think it was like 2013. And he probably should have won at least one in that stretch. Who are you going with? Because I'm sure we'll have a debate here.
I'm going with Giannis. I think it is a 2-person race, but I don't really think it's close. I love LeBron, and I would love for him to win one more MVP award. And I think what he's done this year has been phenomenal in terms not only assists, but win total and just turning this Lakers team around in a matter of like a year. And off of his injury as well, I think he's done a great job. But when you just look at Giannis and his impact, it's just undeniable. He's arguably the best player in this league, not just this year, but for the foreseeable future. He's going to be king of this league. You just look at his numbers, 29 points per game, top 3 in points, top 3 in rebounds, 13.7 rebounds a game. Still gets about 6 assists a game, gets a block and a steal, shoots 55 from the field, leads the league in defensive rebounding. He leads the league in a couple stats. Leads the league in defensive rebounding, defensive rating, defensive win shares, defensive plus minus, and win shares in general. So talk about our defensive player of the year debate. We both chose AD, but I mean, based off of what I just said, Giannis could easily, topping all those advanced stats, defensive metric numbers, could easily be in the conversation for not only MVP, but defensive player in the year as well. I don't know if I mentioned this, but he's also leads the league in PER by a couple points, which to me is one of the most important stats you could look at, because it's just in terms of everything. It takes everything into consideration in terms of efficiency and ranks him, and he's by far at the top of the pack. Not to mention the Bucks are the top team in the NBA at 53-12, and if it wasn't for a 3-game losing streak towards the end of the year, they would have been 53-9. Could have been a 65-plus win team if the season finished. I don't think there's really any debate. I think Giannis deserves back-to-back MVPs, and I don't think this is going to be the last MVP he gets.
I agree with you that this won't be the last MVP he gets, but you mentioned one little thing. He's gonna be the king of the NBA. He ain't the king yet, and it's LeBron James. LeBron James is the king. He's gonna win the MVP. I think he has long deserved an MVP, and this year is no exception. leads the league in assists with 10.6 a game. He's led a Lakers team who, after missing the playoffs, has gotten them to first in the West. 25.7 points per game, 7.9 total rebounds, a PER of 26, 9.5 win shares, overall top to bottom. And you just see it on the floor. The Lakers has just performed so well, and I think that's because LeBron, he was very, very annoyed after what happened last year with the Lakers missing the playoffs. He has heard a lot of the critics surrounding him like, oh, LeBron's done. He's washed up. The whole hashtag Wash King. LeBron James has come out with a vengeance this season, a fire lit in his chest, and I think he will lead the Lakers to the first seed in the West into a championship. All the storyline writes itself for LeBron James, and I think he has played the best by far. And you mentioned that 3-game losing streak for the Bucks toward the end of the quote-unquote season at this point, because we don't know when it will exactly resume. One of those losses was to LeBron James and the Lakers. LeBron James, I think, has well-deserved it this season. And honestly, I think he has a lesser supporting cast than Giannis Antetokounmpo, which will play a slight factor. Sure, Anthony Davis is – hold on. Let me get to my point.
Whoa.
LeBron and Giannis are the 1A of each team. Anthony Davis is right there. But then you can make the argument that the Bucks have Chris Middleton, Brook Lopez, Eric Bledsoe, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And a lot of those guys maybe are probably better than what the Lakers have.
I mean,
Can you agree with me on that?
Danny Green, Avery Bradley, Kyle Kuzma, KCP, Dwight Howard. I mean, you guys have depth for ages. And a lot of what your argument consisted of is what he's going to do in the postseason and how he's going to bring
look at the regular season, too.
But we're talking about the regular season award, and if you just look at the numbers and the impact, and in terms of record, you said Lakers' best team in the West, Bucks' best team in the league.
They're in the East. They're in the Eastern Conference. They're in the same division as the Chicago
You
Bulls.
Can't say that anymore. You can't say that anymore.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can. The Bucks are in the same division as the Cleveland Cavaliers, Detroit Pistons, the Chicago Bulls, who are the bottom. The Cavs, second worst record in the entire NBA. The Pistons, third worst record in the East. The Bulls, fifth worst. I mean, they have played no one in the Eastern Conference.
The same division as the Kings and the Warriors.
Okay, the Warriors, this is an anomaly. The Kings are making a playoff push. The Suns.
Kings are not making a playoff push. They're done.
The Pistons are making a playoff push. They're probably with the Pelicans and the Bulls.
You can say the Bulls are making a playoff push if we really want to get into that, but
no way. I mean, the Bulls are 8 games back of the 8th seed.
How much are the Kings?
3.5.
All right. That still doesn't matter as much. I mean,
it's got to be LeBron. I think we should have a bet now. Whoever wins the MVP, loser does something for the winner, personally.
I mean, I'll gladly take that bet because odds are on my side and logic on my side. And your fan bias is on your side. So, I mean, we'll see.
It is a little bit.
I mean, I'm not discounting LeBron. He's had a great year. He's 36 and he's arguably still the best player in the league, which is unreal. And he's leading the league in assists. I mean, his IQ just keeps growing and growing. He doesn't even have to score, top points in the league anymore, just dominate in that aspect. Not only because he has a helper in Anthony Davis, but just he's just smarter. He wants to reserve his body for when it really matters, which is the playoffs, which we'll get into in a bit. And that's where I think he'll have his biggest impact, where he could be considered the MVP, the best player in the league. But that's playoffs. When we're talking about regular season, I think Giannis deserves it. But, I mean, hey, we'll see. We'll see.
There's one thing working against your guy, too, and that has hurt LeBron in recent years. Voter fatigue. I think Giannis has got another hype.
He's won. LeBron has 4.
Giannis just won. LeBron hasn't won in years. And look at what he's done this year, LeBron has.
You can do it in pairs, though. Curry back-to-back, Nash back-to-back, LeBron twice back-to-back.
They like their pairs. Nash doesn't deserve either of those MVPs.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's a different conversation.
One of them should have gone to Kobe and the other should have gone to Shaq.
Yeah, I'm just saying, though, they like to do them in pairs, if anything. Yeah. So I don't think they're fatigued as yet. Maybe next year they'll be fatigued. But I think Giannis, it was hard to one-up what he did last year. He did it. So I think he deserves another MVP on his shelf.
I'm going to ride the LeBron James train. I agree with you. Giannis Antetokounmpo will win multiple MVPs in his career. He ain't getting his second this year. It's going to be LeBron James.
Okay.
Let's shift gears a little bit, though. Yeah. Let's talk about the All-NBA teams, first team, second team, third team. So the categories for this, it's going to be 2 forwards, 2 guards, and a center. Mm-hmm. Center is a little bit difficult, obviously. So
it's big pretty much. Like the NBA is mainly positionless now. And as we look at the first team, I have Luka listed as a guard. He's played everything from point guard to small forward. So say what you will there. If
I
he's
have
just
Luka
a
as a small
forward,
forward.
you have him as small forward, which
Oh.
affects your team's ranking. But considering Luka as a guard, what my first team is Harden, Luka, LeBron, Giannis, and AD. All 5 have been in the MVP talks all year. All 5 have arguably been the top 5 players in the league, regardless of position. So I think that should undoubtedly be the first team for this year. If you consider Luka a guard, if he's a forward, I don't think he's better than LeBron or Giannis. So I would move him down to second team.
Yeah, so I have Luka considered as a forward. So my first team is LeBron, Giannis, Harden, Trae Young. Although
wow, first team?
Yeah, overall.
The Hawks are one of the worst teams in the league, though.
Hey, but that logic, Trae Young was a start in the All-Star game, has balled out all season, and once again, another guy who could have been considered MVP. Dark horse chance. And my center, by the way, is Joel Embiid. I think overall, Joel Embiid.
Wait, over AD?
Yeah, I kind of had a toss-up between him and AD.
Really?
I'm going to go with Joel Embiid. This is what I'm going to roll with. All right? Don't hate me.
No, I'm not. I'm just don't
hate the player, hate the game.
All right. Moving on to second team.
Yeah.
All right. So moving on to second team, my 2 guards I have Damian Lillard, who in terms of your list, I think should be a first team over Trae Young, but that's a different debate. So Lillard, Ben Simmons, I am on the second team, both as guards. If you consider him a guard, I mean, he could play. He is a guard, but he's played small forward too. But
yeah.
Either way, league's positionless, it's hard to tell. Kawhi Leonard, Nikola Jokic, and Joel Embiid. So I kind of have 2.
So you have Jokic as a forward.
Yeah. Honestly, I have, moving on to the third team, I have Pascal Siakam. And I don't have a center, honestly. So I might move them. In terms of position, I might move Pascal and Jokic, just in terms of position. But in terms of talent, I think Jokic is a second teamer. Whether it's over or not. That's why it's annoying now. Like I don't know what position to put him as because it's so they just play any position almost.
Mm-hmm. My second team, I have Damian Lillard. My second guard, and you're gonna hate me for this, is Russell Westbrook. I think he's taken his game to a next level by far with the Rockets. Like there was a little bit of adjustment period at the beginning. That's gonna happen, and ever since this turn of the new year. In the turn into 2020, although 2020 has so far stunk, Russell Westbrook, his play has been one of the positive things, at least for the NBA. And I think he definitely deserves it. He's helped his Rockets team stay relevant when James Harden has struggled and they have gone to small ball. And then I got Kawhi and Luka as my forwards and AD as my center. I think you could flip-flop him and Embiid for me, at least between first and second team. But I'm going to have him on the second team. Just a guess, I guess. I really don't know. He probably might even be considered a forward. Who knows?
Yeah. AD prefers to play power forward, I believe. He usually is moved to center because of his size and defensive ability. But in terms of this year, I would have.
He plays power forward for the Lakers, too. JaVale McGee usually starts as the center.
Yeah. So that's the thing. Like they can play power forwards to center. It's also that's what the first team is not really point guard, shooting guard, small forward, power forward, center anymore. It's like guards, forwards, and a big. Whether that's a center or power forward, just a big guy, pretty much. Moving on. So I don't hate that Westbrook pick because I have him as a third teamer. I think it was a little rough at first, and he's still not a great shooter. But I mean, his numbers were terrific, and they were when they moved to the small ball lineup. They honestly had a lot more wins than before, which was kind of surprising to me. And a lot of that has to do with Westbrook and his playmaking ability. Then, if we're looking at guards in the East who put up a lot of numbers on bad teams, I have Bradley Beal over Trae Young. Put some respect on that man's name.
You have no Trae Young on your All-NBA teams.
He's an honorable mention to me. I love Trae Young, but the Hawks were not good this year. And this is my argument. In terms of players putting up good numbers on bad teams, I think Beal deserves it more than Trae Young does because he put up better numbers. The
Wizards are significantly worse.
No, that's not true. First of all, offensively, they're one of the best teams in the league, and that has a lot to do with Beal. And the Hawks, they had a lot of injury problems as well, but so did the Wizards. I mean, John Wall was out the entire year. And
they knew that. The Wizards knew John Wall was going to be out.
Either way, both teams are bad. Beal put up better numbers, and he's made back-to-back All-Star games. He's proven he's a top talent in this league.
He missed the All-Star game.
I think he deserves it more. Trae Young, next year he'll easily be on the team. that's not very fair to Trae Young, but I think he has to wait a year. Give someone like Beal the respect. He's earned it. I think he should be at least a third teamer for putting up 30 points a game and still being somewhat in the playoff hunt. He's the Wizards have been in the standings above the Hawks the entire year. So I think a slight advantage to Beal there. Then I have Jimmy Butler, what he's done with the Heat. I believe he deserves to make the third team. Brandon Ingram, the improvement he's made, I think he's solidified himself as a stud and should be a third teamer. And then I have, as I mentioned before, Pascal Siakam.
So your forwards are who?
Butler and Brandon Ingram.
So you have Butler as a forward, and then your guards are Beal and
guards are Beal and Westbrook.
Okay. Yeah, I missed that. So my guards,
Sorry, you go.
Yeah, my guards, I have Ben Simmons and Jimmy Butler. Although Jimmy Butler wasn't considered a guard for the All-Star game, he is a guard, and I'm just gonna die on that hill.
He's been small forward most of his career.
Also, I couldn't leave off these two guys. I have Jason Tatum and Pascal Siakam as my forwards.
That's the thing. I know you like Tatum, and I kind of like Brandon Ingram. So I knew one of those two could have definitely made the third team as a forward. I think Brandon Ingram had a better year. I mean, Tatum, no doubt, has made improvements and has become the leader of that Celtics team, which is the second seed in the East. But I mean, BI is just looking like the next Kevin Durant. Like we thought was.
Stop it.
I mean, why not?
Kevin Durant.
If he doesn't
I've heard that argument too many times as a Laker fan.
No, I'm tired of it. He feel a bit injury issues, and with LeBron coming, he kind of didn't have the ball as much. When he was finally leading a team, this Pelicans team was solid, and he was putting up great numbers as an all-star. So I think Brandon Ingram, it's a toss-up between him and Tatum. We both favor one over the other, so that's why it differs in our list. But
my center, by the way, for the third team is Nikola Jokic. If Bam Adebayo gets considered center, you can make the case, but I think Jokic, he's on the third best team in the Western Conference. And by the way, you can have a bunch of guys as honorable mentions because this year there have been top to bottom a lot of really good talent. Guys like Jamal Murray, Donovan Mitchell, Chris Paul,
Cat,
maybe. Who else am I missing? Kemba Walker, Jaylen Brown, Zach LaVine, even maybe you can make an argument. What?
Jaylen Brown wasn't even an all-star, though. I mean, that's a bit of a –
make the argument, I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like, the league overall, I think, is in a really good state. And it just shows that a lot of guys weren't even mentioned for All-NBA. CJ McCollum, you can make the argument for possible. I don't have Brandon Ingram. You do. There's just a plethora of talent here.
And just think about all the stars. Just think about all the stars that are injured, too. I mean, Steph Curry, Kevin Durant. Kyrie was injured most of the year. Paul George injured most of the year. Klay Thompson out the whole year. Oladipo only had a couple games. I mean, all those guys are former All-NBA teamers and easily would have made it, especially KD, Steph. Those were locks. They would have made it if they were healthy. So that just shows, I mean, the people that made our list are solid, and then you still have 5 or 6 superstars that were injured that easily would have made the list. So, yeah, the NBA is in a really good position, especially looking towards the playoffs, which I think we should make the transition to. We got all the regular season awards out of the way. Now, if the playoffs do happen, we're assuming they will because they have on the start of May 8th, they will open practice facilities and get players starting to warm up.
Not early.
Yeah, it was supposed to be the first. It was supposed to be the first, but of course, the Hawks of all teams wanted to push it back. Like they have many games.
The Warriors said they weren't going to open theirs either.
Well, the Warriors are eliminated no matter what, and yeah, their season's done for. Most of the teams that aren't in the playoffs right now, their seasons will be done because I don't know if we'll have regular season games or how many there will be. But in terms of the East, the 1 through 8 are pretty much locks, and in the West, 1 through 7 are locks. And
there can be some movement. The seeds aren't locked, but the teams are locked.
Seeds aren't locked, but we know what teams are going to be in pretty much.
Yeah.
So looking forward with that in mind, we have in terms of standings, we'll just match up each team. Looking at the East first, how do you think the first round is going to shape up?
So the first round, it would be Bucks Magic, Raptors Nets, Celtics Sixers, Heat Pacers. Bucks winning, Raptors winning. Celtics Sixers could be interesting.
This is I paid the most attention to this series. I did
I'm gonna have the Celtics now. I don't trust the process anymore. I've lost all faith in it. I think Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid can't coexist. And I think there's got to be a change, especially if they lose in the first round. One of those two guys is going to be traded, I think.
Real quick before I go, Heat Pacers, who do you have?
I'm going to go Miami. I think it's close. It all depends on who gets home court advantage because both of those teams are tied in terms of record. Or no, sorry. Pacers, Sixers are tied. But they're close enough where if they play, let's say, 5 games, the Pacers could leapfrog the Heat. We're just assuming that everything stays the same as it is right now. But I'm going to go with Miami. I think they got a better core. In terms of Jimmy Butler is the best player between both of those teams. I think the Heat got the first, second, and maybe even the third best player between those two teams, especially given the fact that Victor Oladipo is not 100% still.
Yeah. So you mentioned home court. If they do have the playoff games in Disney World, that won't be a
too. I forgot about that.
There's no fans. Even if it's not there, there's just not going to be fans. So that doesn't matter anymore. Home court, really. So we got to take that into consideration.
I did forget about that. I'm gonna keep my picks up. If they're gonna do a neutral court, I'm gonna keep it all chalk. Bucks, Raptors, Celtics, Heat.
All right. So yeah, I also have the Bucks. Obviously, best team in the league. They'll take care of the Magic easily. The Raptors. I don't think KD and Kyrie will come back, but if enough time passes, they should be healthy to the point where they could come back and make this series very interesting. But I don't think it's not going to happen. And if that's the case, the Nets can't get it done against the Raptors. So I agree with that. Then we get to the Celtics-Sixers series. And I was kind of flip-flopping at first, but I've always been kind of on the side of the Sixers, mainly because you look at the acquisition of Al Horford. That mainly was done because that was the Sixers' killer in the past. So you take him off of the Celtics, put him onto the Sixers. You just look at that team, the talent they have in general. Obviously, they have Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid, who, they don't work terrifically together. But, I mean, you have solid outside shooters like Josh Richardson, who you signed, Tobias Harris, who's a great scorer as well, with players like Matisse Thybulle, who are defensive-minded wings.
As a rookie, too.
Who could wreak havoc on people like Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum in a playoff series. Even Shake Milton, who came out of nowhere, is dropping like 30 burgers every game.
Furkan
Korkmaz as well. I mean, they've got a lot of depth, and I think they just have overall talent for in a series where there might not be home court and with all this time passing. I don't think coaching will be as much of a factor. I think in terms of talent, the Sixers are much more talented than the Celtics. I think it'll be close. And if you look at their regular season matchups, Sixers were 3-1. They beat the Celtics. So I think the Sixers have a slight advantage. I could see this going either way. I think the Celtics are one of the best teams in the league, so it would be a shocker to see them with a first-round exit. But I think the Sixers can get it done. They were a couple Kawhi bounces away from possibly making to the Eastern Conference Finals last year without without Josh Richardson, without some of these guys they've signed. And I think the Sixers will just have the upper hand in this series. And then moving to the Heat-Pacers series, I think the Heat will easily take care of the Pacers. Oladipo, their best player, has been out most of the year. He hasn't had a consistent play coming back from injury. The Heat have just made so many strides this year. I don't see him losing in the first round. And they beat the Pacers both times they played them in the regular season. So I think they win that series as well. And the matchup I'd be looking forward to is Jimmy Butler and TJ Warren of the Pacers. They got a little chirpy the last time they played. Warren got ejected because of Butler's antics. So I think that'll be a little heated matchup right there. But like you said, Butler the best player in the series. They have the better coach. And if home court is into consideration, they have the higher seed, so they would get the advantage there. So I think the Heat come out of that series as victors.
I will say the one thing, circling back to that Celtics-Sixers matchup, because that's probably going to be the best series out of all 4 of them in the first round. You mentioned that you think that Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons can coexist and that chemistry might not be 100%. That's the thing where the Celtics, I think, have the edge. I think with Kyrie no longer the team, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Kemba Walker, Gordon Hayward, those guys just mesh so well together. Marcus Smart can be thrown into that equation as well. That I think that chemistry could be the ultimate edge factor between the Celtics and the Sixers. I agree with what you're saying there. I think Al Horford could be a huge part, but he's been kind of a disappointment all season long. And I think at the end of the day, I think the Celtics will have the greater – I think they have the better coach. Maybe not the better first player or second player, but they got the better overall team chemistry. And that will be a huge factor.
Horford's definitely been a bit of a disappointment in terms of regular season play and also just the fact that they overpaid him. He hasn't lived up to his contract. But when you look at the matchups as well, the bigs on the Celtics, you have Joel Embiid, one of the best bigs in the league, and then Al Horford from the Celtics, now on the Sixers. And in the Celtics, they have Daniel Tice, and Enes Kanter is a terrible defender, and it really can only score within like 5 feet or so. So I think they could easily dominate in the paint. And then they still have outside shooters, like you mentioned with Furkan Korkmaz and Josh Richardson and those type of players. So I think the matchup isn't great for Celtics because they could just back them down low. And in terms of regular season play, Al Horford's been a little disappointing, but I think you get him for series like this, like in playoff series. I think that's where he kind of has his impact is felt a little more.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
It's going to be close, though. I definitely agree. I mean, these are two close, good teams, same division. It'll be a good rivalry game, a little history there. So that's definitely one of the more interesting series.
Indeed it is. Do you want to shift to the Western Conference first round, or do you want to finish out the East? How do you want to do this?
I can go with the West.
All right, let's go with the West.
Round by round.
So you got Lakers, Clippers, Nuggets, Jazz, Thunder, Rockets, Mavericks, Grizzlies, in that order. Let's start with the 8 seed because that's still up in the air. Let's say they play 7 games to get teams warmed up. 7 regular season games as if the schedule didn't change. Who do you think gets in as the 8th seed between Memphis, Portland, New Orleans, Sacramento, and I guess you could say San Antonio, because all those teams are with Memphis is the 8th seed, Portland, New Orleans, Sacramento, San Antonio are within 4 games of the 8th spot.
I don't really see the Grizzlies losing that 8th spot because if there's only 7 games or so, I think they're 3 games ahead of the 9th seed in the West. So they would have to lose in the majority of those games where other teams win the majority. So in terms of the gap that's there in a 7-game span, it might be hard for them to lose that leverage. I do think, honestly, that teams like the Pelicans and the Trailblazers have more talent, have more experienced guys like Damian Lillard. Went to the Western Conference Finals last year. Then you get the Pelicans. I mean, Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson, Lonzo Ball, Derek Favors, Drew Holiday. I mean, they're stacked rosters, but that's going to work more in next year when they have more time to make the playoffs. I think just the gap right now is too big. I don't see the Grizzlies losing it.
Yeah, I think it all depends on how many games the NBA decides to play before starting the playoffs. If they play a lower number, that helps the Grizzlies immensely. If they play maybe 20, that could be a whole different story. The Lakers they're 49-14, so that's 63. So there's about 20 or so games left in the regular season for most NBA teams. Some have a little bit more, some a little less. So it really all depends on how many they play. But I agree with you. I think the Grizzlies, if they play 10 or fewer games, they can hold on to that 8th seed without a doubt. So let's go to the playoff picture. Lakers over Grizzlies. We're both going Lakers, I assume, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Clippers over Mavericks. Luka can make it interesting, but I'm going to go with the Clippers.
It's one of the best historical offenses in league history in the Mavericks against a stacked defensive team in the Clippers. But, I mean, you have 2 best players in the series, Kawhi Leonard and arguably Paul George. I mean, Luka's solid. But Luka is first playoff series.
Yeah.
I don't see it happening. It'll be a tough series. It's not going to be a cakewalk for the Clippers, but I don't see them losing first round. All this hype they build up and just their team makeup is so strong. It's kind of like that Celtics makeup, but they have the stars in Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. So I think they're going to be one of the more tougher teams. So I think they do win over the Mavericks.
Then you got Denver and Houston. I'm going to go with Houston on this one.
Yeah, I agree. Underdog pick here. I think it's a bad matchup for the Nuggets because it's a small ball lineup for the Rockets, and then you have Jokic, who's not a good perimeter defender. I think he's going to get exposed. He's going to get tired out in that series, just their fast-paced type of offense. I don't think it's a good matchup there. And just Westbrook and Harden are the 2 best players in that series, and they've just worked so well with the small ball lineup recently. I don't really understand it. I don't see how getting rid of Clint Capella has helped them this much and having Tucker as their center.
They've dropped from the 4th seed to the 6th seed ever since getting rid of Clint Capella for the most part, but they've played pretty solidly in recent games, despite from when they started. And I think, like you mentioned, Jokic is going to get exhausted. I think the speed of the Rockets will be a huge, huge factor. Russell Westbrook are arguably the fastest, best transition player in the league. Him, maybe LeBron, Ben Simmons, you can make that case. That's another day. But James Harden, obviously the leading scorer of the league, was in the MVP conversation. And they're not horrible defensively either. So I think all that works in the favor of the Rockets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that.
And then finally you get the Jazz and the Thunder, which I actually really, really like for the Thunder. I'm going to give it to them in this one. I think their guard trio, like we've mentioned, of Chris Paul, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and Dennis Schroeder could definitely outduel the Jazz. There's a little bit of a chemistry rift on the Jazz now with Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell and the whole coronavirus thing. If you've been keeping up with the news, obviously Rudy Gobert, first NBA player to test positive. Donovan Mitchell contracted the virus, assuming from Rudy Gobert, given his carelessness, or what, according to reports.
Well, and in a video of him touching mics after a post-game interview. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that will work against the Jazz in this case, and I think the Thunder can thrive off of that. They can exploit a team's weakness very, very well. Chris Paul, I think, is hungry and has got something to prove. They might not win the championship, but Chris Paul is going to play his heart out these playoffs.
Yeah, I see what you're saying there. They did have 2 matchups during the series, regular season, and they split that, so it is a bit of a toss-up. But I don't see the Jazz. I mean, they beat the Thunder when they had Paul George and Russell Westbrook and most of this roster that they have right now. I don't see them losing when they lose those 2. And sure, Chris Paul has been great this season, but he's not who he is really in terms of playoff production. I mean, he's always struggled in the playoffs. Donovan Mitchell's has got it done both the times they've been in the first round. They beat the Thunder and forget who they beat last year. But anyways,
Jazz?
Yeah.
Was it not Houston? Did not play Houston?
I feel like it might have.
I think they lost to Houston in the first round.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Either way. But yeah, so I just think the Jazz also have more of a stacked roster. They have so many playmakers who can score. Not only Donovan Mitchell, but they got Jordan Clarkson who can score off the bench. Bojan Bogdanovic is putting up 20 points a game. He's a solid player. He can create his own offense. Rudy Gobert is just a dominant figure in the paint. So he's going to force Thunder to shoot outside more, which isn't necessarily a strong suit. People like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Dennis Schroeder definitely get more of the production inside. Yep. So I feel like the Jazz will have a bit of an upper hand there, and I have them winning the series.
All right. I mean, once again, it's a toss-up, and it really all depends on a whole lot of different things. We'll shift back to the Eastern Conference for the Eastern Conference semis. So you had Milwaukee, Toronto, Philly, and Miami advancing. So it would be Milwaukee versus Miami, Toronto versus Philly. Yeah. What are your matchups? Who do you think is going to take them?
So in terms of this, we both have Bucks, Heat versing off against each other, right?
Yeah.
Yes. So I have the Bucks winning this series.
I do too.
The Heat actually won both the regular season matchups, which is interesting.
Really?
But yeah. I was very shocked when I saw that. I mean,
I would thought the opposite.
Came out of nowhere and had a great season, but the Bucks have just been the dominant force in the East for a couple years now, and I don't see any one of them stopping Giannis. You could throw Bam on him, but that's just going to be a tough matchup. And then you still have guys like Chris Middleton. You got to worry about Eric Bledsoe and Brook Lopez in terms of stuffing pain as well. I think the Bucks come out of that series.
The thing with the Bucks, they've surrounded Giannis with some really good pieces that fit Giannis's gameplay. Giannis's gameplay is going north to south, driving to the hole. I think he leads the NBA in points in the paint, and even shots in the paint as well. But they got a lot of guys where he can just drive and kick out to. You mentioned Chris Middleton, Eric Bledsoe, Brook Lopez, Wes Matthews, George Hill, Kyle Korver, Dante DiVincenzo. The list goes on and on and on. And I think that'll ultimately be what the Bucks – that's going to be their ride or die for the series, because teams could pressure Giannis and force him to do things he doesn't want to do all they want. But if the Bucks can knock down the 3-ball, that's going to be their ultimate X factor and how deep they'll make it into the playoffs. I have them winning as well in this series. I think it's just too much for the Heat. I will like watching that series though, and I actually think Bam Adebayo could do a decent job on Giannis Antetokounmpo. Giannis might have the speed advantage, but Bam, he's just big. I think he could muscle Giannis a little bit, and that could tire him out. Yeah,
I agree with that. Also, as you mentioned, the three-point aspect, and that's one of the Heat's strong suits.
That's true.
Yeah, Duncan Robinson, one of the, I think, top 5 in three-pointers made this season.
Tyler Hero
off the bench, solid three-point shooter. Jimmy Butler can hold his own from the three-point line. So it might come down to who's a better three-point shooter. But then again, I just don't see this Bucks team losing this early with just the system they have in place and arguably the best player in the league. I just don't see it happening.
Once again, the Bucks have more experience in this. Jimmy has been there before, deep in the playoffs, but Bam hasn't. Duncan Robinson, Tyler Hero, Kendrick Nunn, a lot of the Heat's main pieces have not gone deep in the playoffs. They do have Andre Iguodala, which
I forgot about that. Yeah,
Andre Iguodala and Jay Crowder, 2 other guys who they could throw at Giannis, which could be an underrated thing. But once again, I think the Bucks could. They might not steamroll the Heat, but I think they win 4-2 easily.
Because he have depth, but so do the Bucks. It's just they have more star power at the helm.
Right.
Yeah, it is interesting though that the Heat did win both regular season.
It is very interesting.
Regular season and playoffs are different.
Here's just when those games were played, though. Were they earlier in the season? I know one of those games I think was early on in the year.
I don't know when they were played, but that would be interesting to see.
Because these teams are very different from where they were at the start of the year. That's my one thing. Shifting gears to the second round, so you have it as Toronto and Philly. I have it as Toronto and Boston. Are we both going Raptors here? Or are you going somewhere? You're going Philly.
I think if the Sixers beat the Celtics, I think not only do they have to beat the Raptors, but I think they definitely will beat the Raptors. So I think the Celtics are a better team than the Raptors. And the one strong suit the Raptors have is Pascal Siakam. I think that's neutralized by Joel Embiid. And like I mentioned, just with the size and the depth that the Sixers have, I think it's just going to be tough for the Raptors to deal with because in past playoff series, they've just been their usual Raptors selves. Aside from last year when they had Kawhi Leonard, they usually lose to powerhouses in the second round or so. I don't think that changes here. I mean, Kyle Lowry can't hide behind Kawhi Leonard anymore. He has to actually produce good numbers in the playoffs as he wants to move on. But I think the mismatch between him and Ben Simmons will be just too much. And I think the Sixers come out of this one.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think the Raptors win this one. I have the Celtics winning, I think. But like you mentioned, Kyle Lowry, he's the second guy on this team this year, not the third. You can make the argument he was the second last year, but I'm going to go Pascal Siakam. And I think just the moment will be, I wouldn't say too big, but I think the Sixers or the Celtics, whoever it is going to be hungrier to win. And I think the thing for the Celtics that works in their favor, Jason Tatum, Kobe Bryant obviously passed away almost 2 months ago, a little more than 3 months ago, last week. Jason Tatum was very close to Kobe. I think that Mamba mentality started to set in. You saw it toward the end of the regular season at this point. And I think it will continue. And I think Jason Tatum will come out with a fire that carries the Celtics deep into the playoffs. And then not to mention Kemba Walker played out of his mind. The Celtics overall chemistry, I think, far surpasses any other team in the East besides maybe the Bucks. And I think they make it to the Eastern Conference Finals to play against Milwaukee.
Yeah, and also if it was a Celtics-Raptors series, a lot of the Raptors' success, as we mentioned earlier, is tied to Nick Nurse and his great coaching ability. But, I mean, Brad Stevens is a great coach for the Celtics as well. And just the wings that the Celtics have, I think is going to be a real issue for the Raptors to deal with. And I'd agree. If the Celtics do beat the Sixers, I think they would also beat the Raptors and would move on to face the Bucks in the Eastern Conference Finals.
The Celtics might not have the size against the Raptors. I think the Raptors with Siakam and Ibaka and Gasol have some of the best size in the entire conference. But I think the wing play, like you mentioned, and that will be evident against either the Celtics or the Sixers for that matter, because Ben Simmons, he's not going to play it, obviously, in the paint. He's playing driving more. That will be a huge factor as well.
Also, they have a lot more age on their side as well. I mean, Kyle Lowry's mid-30s, Serge Ibaka in his 30s, Marc Gasol is getting pretty old as well. So they were solid players a couple years ago. They still are solid players. But, I mean, each year they get older and older. And a young Celtics team like this, I think, could just feast on them.
Mm-hmm. Shifting to the West again. So we had the Lakers. I had the Lakers advancing, the Clippers advancing, the Rockets, and the Thunder. You were the same, right? Or you had the Jazz?
The Jazz.
Okay, you had the Jazz.
Either way, Lakers.
It'd be Lakers over either the Jazz or the Thunder.
Easily.
Not much to talk about. And then it'd be Clippers versus the Rockets. Interesting matchup. As much as I want to see Lakers-Clippers in the Eastern Conference Final, I think the Rockets could give the Clippers a run for their money. But in the end, I'm going to go Clippers. The defense, I think, trumps the offense. But I wouldn't be surprised if the Rockets beat the Clippers. I wouldn't at all. I think if the Rockets could get hot, that could just overwhelm the Clippers. But it's a lot harder to get hot on defense than it is on a lot harder to get hot on offense than it is on defense. And the Clippers, that's where they bode well.
Yeah, this is a Rockets team where they pretty much have to be hot in order to win games because they rely so much on the three ball and just shooting in general. And in past playoff series, it hasn't worked out for them. Even when they have been on their been shooting well from three, they haven't been able to overcome in a 7-game series because you could be on fire for a couple days, but it's a 7-game series. It's long. You have to win multiple matchups, 4 out of the 7 games. Obviously, that's how it works. But then when you go against the Clippers,
that is how it works. I wasn't
there. Okay. But then when you go against a Clippers team, which is one of the best perimeter defensive teams in the league. I think that's a terrible matchup for the Rockets. They did split the regular series 2-2, but I think in terms of playoff production, Kawhi, we've seen when he taps into a different animal, he has more of the Mamba mentality than I think you mentioned with Jason Tatum, because he's more progressed in his career. He has that experience, and his game reflects Kobe's a lot. Once they get to the playoffs, I think we'll see a different side of Kawhi like we did last year. I think they'll easily take care of the Rockets in the playoffs. And I think we all predicted it in the beginning of the year. It'd be Lakers-Clippers in the Western Conference Finals. I never thought there'd be anything stopping that, and I don't think there will be.
I think the one thing for the Rockets, the criticism for James Harden for the majority of his career with the Rockets is that he gets too tired. He works himself up during the regular season, and he's gassed by the playoffs. This break might actually be what James Harden needs. And I think that could bode well for him in the playoffs. But once again, I think the Clippers' defense just overwhelms the Rockets. Finally, in the Eastern Conference Finals, Bucks Sixers for you, Bucks Celtics for me. Are we both going the Bucks here?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think unless Giannis Antetokounmpo gets tired like he did in the Eastern Conference Finals last year, I don't see them not making it to the finals.
Especially if they verse the Celtics, they're not stopping him in the paint at all. He's going to dominate. I mean, he might have that fatigue factor by then, but with this break, as you mentioned, he get that energy back up, and he'll just go drive into that Celtics paint every possession pretty much, and might even sweep them. That's a terrible matchup in my opinion. Maybe not, but that's a terrible matchup. I don't see anyone on the team fit to guard Giannis.
All you got to do is hit Giannis, though. You hit him enough, and he's going to get tired. And that's why I think the Sixers is actually a better matchup against the Bucks than the Celtics are, because they can throw a lot more bigs at him. But I do think the Bucks steamroll both teams. Or not, I wouldn't say steamroll, but I think they do win convincingly. Yeah,
Bucks are more of a cohesive team than we've seen out of the Sixers, which is always our biggest knock. And I think that they did make it this far, in my opinion, the Sixers, but I don't think they could get over the hump, which is the Bucks and Giannis Antetokounmpo. So I think the Bucks will make the finals.
And then finally for the West, I mean, I'd be a traitor if I didn't do it. I'm going to go with the Lakers. The Lakers are going to beat the Clippers. And that might be the homerism and Laker fan in me. It must be clear for anyone watching. I'm a Laker fan because of Kobe Bryant. That's who got me into basketball. I'm not a bandwagon fan. Just make that clear. Ryan Amick, you can attest to that.
I know.
Yes.
That's true. I won't.
You're a suffering Knicks fan, so you know.
Yes. Struggling.
Yes. But I think the Lakers overall, you've seen in the regular season matchups, the Lakers did lose the first two to the Clippers, but in that most recent one, you just saw LeBron James taking over. I think that's what he will do this playoffs, and this rest is greatly helping him. The rest helps the teams with the older stars, or the stars who get used the most. The Rockets, the Lakers, the Bucks. Giannis, LeBron, and James Harden. And I think the Lakers are going to thrive off of this. LeBron James is going to just come out insane. I think he will just take over the series. And not to mention, they arguably have the 1-2 punch of the Lakers is better than the Clippers, especially depending on Paul George's health. That would be a huge thing as well.
I agree with you. Actually, I think the Lakers will win this series. On paper and at the beginning of the year, I thought the Clippers had a stronger team, especially defensively. I thought they could have stopped the Lakers and would have advanced. But given this season the Clippers have, it's been pretty underwhelming. Paul George has been in and out of the lineup a lot. Then you had Kawhi Leonard load managing, so he hasn't been – they've had time to get used to each other, but it's just so many new –
Everyone's had load management this year too.
Yeah, and then they got Marcus Morris at the trade deadline, and his production's dipped from when he was on the Knicks, and that's just another piece they have to get adjusted to. And then they have their bigs are Ivica Zubac and then Montrezl Harrell, which don't compare to the Lakers' bigs and AD, Dwight Howard, JaVale McGee, and just they'll stuff the paint. I don't think. And we talk about the Clippers being a great defensive team. The Lakers are a really good defensive team as well, top 3 in the league in terms of defense. And I think just we know that LeBron plays so much better in the playoffs, and I think we'll see that come, especially with the death of Kobe, and then this being like the Lakers' season to kind of avenge that and win a championship. I think LeBron's on a mission. He still wants to prove he was a king. After last year, he was injured, and talks of, Giannis might be because he won MVP, or Kawhi because he won Finals MVP. I think LeBron is on a mission. He'll get it done in the Western Conference Finals. It'll be a close series. I mean, this is one of the most anticipated series I can remember.
Does it go 7, do you think? Does it go 7 if they play a 7-game series?
I can easily see it going 7. I would imagine it going 7. What, you don't think so?
I think the Lakers could pull it out in 6, honestly. I think top to bottom, the Lakers have a better team than the Clippers. Like, let's
And
be
they don't have that home court because not
yeah,
only are they in the same city, but they're not even be home court if we're just playing in.
that helps out huge, too. What do you think
Yeah.
about it?
I definitely have the Lakers coming out on top in this series. So we both have it, Lakers, Bucks.
And I think that was predicted at the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
We're not reinventing the wheel or anything over here at the Chips podcast, but I think
it's logical. I mean, you'd be reaching if you said anything else. It said maybe Clippers, Bucks. Like, I could see that happening. But if you said, like, Rockets, Bucks, or, like, Lakers, Celtics or something, it'd be kind of a reach because
you never know. If this is also all assuming that there are no injuries. If, like, Giannis were to tear his ACL in the first game, the Bucks have zero shot at making it to the NBA Finals. They might not even make it out of the first round. Possibly.
I wouldn't say that. But also, this is one of the more unpredictable playoff series in recent memory because of how different it is, because of the break, because there's so much uncertainty, maybe no fans. Like, no player has played in front of no fans before, so we don't know how they're going to react to that. So it's one of the more hard to predict series in recent memory, but I still don't think that I still think the top 3 teams in the league by far, Lakers, Clippers, Bucks. So one of those LA teams and the Bucks, I think either way.
Like the Larry O'Brien. Yeah. Lakers, Bucks, though. We'll get this and we'll wrap this thing up because it's been a long episode already. I'm going to go with the Lakers. LeBron, coming out the rest, he's had that vengeance all season long to prove the naysayers wrong that he ain't done. And I think that will carry the Lakers. The storyline writes itself as well with the passing of Kobe Bryant. I think LeBron desperately wants this for not only the city of Los Angeles and the team of the Lakers, but he wants this for his legacy. If he wins this title, I think you could definitely make the argument that he is better than Michael Jordan, if not already. Personally, I think Jordan is better than LeBron. But that's a different argument for a different day. But if he wins this title, LeBron does, I think he is definitely better than – there's a definitely good chance that he is better than Michael Jordan. And he wants that for his legacy. And not to mention, Anthony Davis, I think, could control the paint against Giannis and any drive. The Lakers' defense overall can neutralize the Bucks' three-point shooting. And I think the Lakers overall have greater advantages than over the Bucks, and the Bucks do over the Lakers.
Yeah, there's storylines galore in not only this series, but just the Lakers and LeBron in general. As we mentioned with Kobe Bryant and this Lakers being such an important season for them, but also with the Last Dance doc coming out, which airs in 20 minutes from now. I mean, the whole conversation is so strong right now because you have contemporary people like us who've only seen LeBron play and we're convinced he's the GOAT or he's the top 2 player just on what we've seen. And then you have a documentary coming out pretty much convincing everyone, like Jordan propaganda, that he was the GOAT all along and he won't be topped. So this is the series for LeBron. If he wins this, there's serious competition with all this Jordan documentary hype coming that he's still the GOAT and no one's going to top him. If he wins his 4th chip with the Lakers and kind of solidifies the Lakers' legacy and Kobe Bryant's legacy, and all these storylines come together, and it favors LeBron, especially if he doesn't win MVP. Instead, he wins Finals MVP or something like that. There's so many storylines that go in the Lakers' favor, and it's not just storylines; in terms of play as well. And like you mentioned, I think they'll do a good job of neutralizing Giannis because he's a north-south, like get straight to the basket kind of guy, and they have the best rim protectors in the league. And it's LeBron and Giannis are neck to neck in terms of talent. But Giannis doesn't have doesn't have an Anthony Davis to back him up. And he doesn't have that playoff experience or finals experience that LeBron has. And I still think LeBron is determined to be the king and remain the king, even with Giannis and Kawhi coming to try to take his crown. I think the Lakers win this series as well. And when they're 17th, tied for the
Celtics. Yeah. But overall, I think it's going to be really interesting once the season does resume, if the season resumes, how they're going to do it, most likely without fans, when they'll do it. I think the longer this break goes on as well, a lot of these guys don't even have access to a basketball hoop. Like Giannis mentioned that he doesn't have a basketball in his house. I find it mind-boggling.
How are you the MVP, super rich, got endorsement deals? I mean, I have a basketball hoop. I can literally –
I threw mine away.
Shots up. I mean, that's ridiculous. You can afford a basketball hoop just like that, Giannis. That's
right. But it'll be interesting. The storylines galore. Overall, though, I just hope basketball comes back soon. I can't wait. I've been basketball deprived. Like I remember last year you and I were sitting in our dorm room watching Damian Lillard end the Thunder as we know it.
Well, I was
That's what
watching.
we need.
I woke you up with
You did wake me up.
my celebration of it. And I just saw, actually, that's funny you brought that up because I saw on YouTube Damian Lillard reacting to his highlight plays of his career. And I just brought up the memory of him hitting that shot, which did end the Thunder as we know it, even though they surprisingly are still in the playoff mix even after that shot. But I mean,
Which is why Billy Donovan could be coach of the year.
Yeah, there's definitely conversation there. And Sam Presti could easily be executive of the year because he's got a stockpile of draft picks and he still made the playoffs against all odds. And with a 5-year-old Chris Paul with a mega deal that was seen as immovable, and now he might be going to the Knicks. There's talks about that, so he might move.
He ain't going to the Knicks. Let it go.
I don't want Chris Paul in the Knicks. I don't want $40 million on our salary just wasted like that. But yeah, that's a different conversation. But I mean, I'm just really looking forward to NBA possibly coming back, and I think it will come back. There are a lot of signs pointing towards it coming back, and it's going to be a lot different. Just like the draft was for the NFL, it's going to be a little weird at first, but I mean, hey, the draft turned out really well with its new format. I mean, this is different. This is actual gameplay. And it's going to be in front of no fans, and it might be weird. It might be in a small gym in Orlando. It's going to be totally different.
Hey, even Wide World Sports Complex.
As long as the champion's crowned, that's all I care about.
Yeah, as long as the champion is crowned, that's all that matters. And hopefully it's sooner rather than later, and we get good – it doesn't have to be great basketball, just some solid basketball. Because they've also – the NBA – like once the NBA resumes, I think that can get us back – to normal in terms of sports. I think the MLB will feel comfortable starting to resume, the NFL, the NHL, and it will start getting back on track. Things will.
A couple of sports that have come back. I mean, NASCAR I think came back this week. Golf is.
PGA Tour comes back in the beginning of June, I think.
Yeah, so there are a couple of sports coming back, so they are starting to lay the groundwork. So if the NBA takes this big step, then I think we'll definitely see like the MLB follow suit. And I'm waiting for the MLB season to start too, because as a Yankees fan, I have high hopes for this season.
I do.
So I hope this doesn't derail our momentum or anything too much. But hey, if anything, it'll help the Yankees because they've been so injury prone that now they have a little more time to kind of mesh together. They got new acquisitions like Garrett Cole. They can just mesh together as a team and then hope for the best. Yeah. Well, we'll talk about MLB another episode. But for this episode of the Chips Podcast, thank you so much for joining us. For Ryan Amick, I'm Tyler Melito, and we'll see you next time. Thank you so much for watching.